Everybody, good morning. Welcome to the United Stand. I'm Mark Goldbridge, and this is your latest Manchester United news as Ruben Amorim is piled on by a disgraceful media. We'll be talking about that. Spin, spin, spin. What a surprise. Lots to get into this morning. Apparently, we're going to buy Victor Osimhen. That's a surprise, isn't it? The morning after another defeat. We're going to be talking a little bit about, well, we've got loads to get into this morning. I mean, the mainstream are even saying Gary Neville shouldn't be on Man United games anymore. I just think that we are on the verge of something very important within this fan base, and you pick your sides and you take your choice. Look, I also want to talk about this tactical bullshit. Desperately want to talk about that. I mean, I just think that I said it in the watch along yesterday. There's so many people who have opinions on Man United, and they're just so weak. They're so thin. They don't actually stand up to any level of scrutiny. I don't like the tactics. It's like an under-9s team. All right, what formation would you go with? Oh, I'd go with a back four. Well, let's break that down and show you why that's completely and utterly stupid as well. I mean, we've got an aggregator account on Twitter this morning that's apparently had a phone call from Qatar saying Qatar want to buy the football club. Distraction, idiots. You've got most websites and other creators this morning going, Amorim wants Osimhen. And you think, oh my God, do you really support Man United? Or are you actually just a moron? Like, what are you doing? Spending time talking about the validity of Amorim wanting Osimhen the morning after yet another loss when our club is in the fucking sewers and we've just missed out on the January transfer window, and you're talking about some fantasy story for the summer. And you wonder why we are where we are when we've got people in the fan base who want to go, United are after Amorim. Wow, United are after Osimhen. Amorim wants Osimhen. Oh, well, if we had Osimhen up front, we'd be cooking next season. Oh, I think we'd be fighting for the league. So, yeah, Man United want Osimhen. Amorim wants Osimhen. And if we had Osimhen, we'd be cooking, man. We'd be absolutely up for it. We'd be fighting with Liverpool for the league. Yeah. Cover, spin, spin, spin. Get the sawdust out. Cover up the blood. Everything's fine. Look, if you want change at this football club, stop swallowing the crap. Osimhen in the summer, what's that got to do with the fact that 2 weeks ago, we ignored the transfer window? We've now got hardly any players, and we've got 4 months left of the season, and we're talking about Osimhen for next season. I mean, this is why we fail. You walk into the traps set for you by this ownership that they've been setting for 10 years. A decade they've been doing this. Man United lose a game, make them think about the future, don't make them think about the now, because if they think about the now, we're in trouble. I mean, Osimhen, like, look, what does it even mean? Amorim wants Osimhen. Tell me what it actually means. What does that actually mean on February the 17th when we could have got him 2 weeks ago? What does Man United want Osimhen mean now? Why is that a story anything other than distraction and spin? And anybody who's putting it out there like, oh, Man United want Osimhen, or starting a video, Man United want Osimhen, let's talk about what Osimhen would bring to the team, because Xerxes and Rasmus can't do the job and we need a world-class striker. Do we? Do we need a world-class striker, do we? Is that it? Is that what we need? We need a world-class striker and everything's going to be okay. Just the same as Marcus Rashford's the problem, or, if we get rid of Casemiro, we're going to win the league. Grow up. Grow up. Where's the money coming from? Why would you spend the money that's limited on one player? This is bigger than anything. I retweeted this morning about a minute of Rangnick 3 years ago. Ralph Rangnick said, this is not one problem or two problem. This is, in a medical term, open heart surgery. But it doesn't need to take 3 years. It can be done in a year if everybody's working together for the same solution and outcome. That was 3 years ago from a guy that knows how to build football clubs. You've got people like Ineos talking about 3 or 4 years. You've got Gary Neville at the end of last week saying you've got to give Ineos 3 or 4 years. Who do you trust? Do you trust Ralph Rangnick, in the last 20 years, one of the top 5 builders of football clubs and systems? Or do you trust Ineos, a petrochemicals company, and Gary Neville? 3 or 4 years, Rangnick said 1 year, if everybody's pulling together and everything is done correctly, you can turn this club around in 1 year. And he said that 3 years ago. And here we are 3 years later with owners that are saying 3 or 4 years. I think I know who I believe, and it's not who we've got in charge. You know what I think might happen? You know why I think Ineos and the Glazers want us to wait 3 or 4 years? Because I think in there's something that I think might happen in 3 or 4 years, and I can't quite put my finger on why Ineos and the Glazers would want to slow expectation and standards down for 3 or 4 years. What do I think could happen in 3 or 4 years? I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of regeneration and building project that's going to go on around there that's going to pocket a lot of money for certain people. So, yeah, we need to keep the fans quiet for 3 or 4 years. So the project's going to take 3 or 4 years. Yeah, absolutely. I think we all know that this doesn't need to be 3 or 4 years. This doesn't need to be 2 years. This can be a massive turnaround in 6 months if we deliver the summer that is needed. But we all know we're not going to get that summer. And that is why when you get people going, oh, what a great source from Turkey about Osimhen. I mean, can I read you the story, by the way? Just so you know what I'm absolutely ridiculing here, because I find it incredible. But what I find more incredible are the people in our fan base who are pushing this and trying to take distractors, because actually, it doesn't matter what Sky Sports say, or TNT say, or Fabrizio Romano says, or Damarcio says, or what anybody says. What matters is how the fan base gets splintered. And, you know, there are protests in a couple of weeks. The club is on its arse. Ineos and the Glazers are sinking it, and everybody's pissed off. But this morning, some people have already splintered off on Osimhen in the summer, because people are pushing it out there going, oh, Osimhen in the summer. I mean, if you woke up this morning and saw a story about Osimhen and went, oh, I'm not bothered about what's happening at United now because we might get Osimhen. I mean, do you really support Man United? Have you really got the interests of the club at heart if you have instantly forgotten what's going on at the club to follow your art, you know, to chase an Osimhen story? And the story is this, by the way. Man United and PSG have shown official interest in signing Victor Osimhen this summer and have both made a verbal offer to him on contract and on salary. Both teams have committed to paying his release clause. Ruben wants Osimhen. I mean, it's got more holes than a hedgehog's pillow. So we've offered Osimhen money we don't have. We've told Napoli we'll play the release clause for money we don't have. And we've agreed signing on fee and everything with Victor Osimhen as well. I mean, what a load of absolute spin. What a load of absolute nonsense. We can't afford Tell 2 weeks ago, but now we've offered Osimhen a contract, a signing on fee, and we're paying Napoli's release clause. Yeah. This exactly fits in with a club that might not have any money at all when it's not in Europe in the summer. And also, he's going to pick PSG over United anyway. It's just absolute nonsense. And people wake up this morning and choose to swallow that shit. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And it needs calling out, because these sort of things are exactly why we are where we are. Because instead of everybody being together and frustrated and wanting to do something, one day after that feeling, people are going, well, we might get Osimhen in the summer. I'll tell you why we're not going to get Osimhen in the summer. I'll tell you why you shouldn't believe this story right now. Because for all your credibility about that, last week, Laurie Whitwell in The Athletic, who will have been given it by very, very well-informed people, probably at the club, said Man United aren't going for Gyökeres anymore. They don't want to spend £60 million on a 27-year-old. And here we are a few days later, apparently agreeing to pay £60 million for a 27-year-old. Well, it'll be 27 in November. Yeah, I think I'm going to really believe this nonsense. And it's so frustrating. And we get what we deserve. We do. We get what we deserve. I've heard so many United fans say it over the years. We get what we deserve because as a fan base, we cannot unite behind one cause in a million years. We can't. It's always the same. We always get spun, distracted from the real thing. And I've got to say, even if Osimhen to Man United was true and it got announced this morning that he's definitely joining Man United, I'd sit here and go, what a load of spinning bullshit. Victor Osimhen to Manchester United is not going to solve our problems, much the same as Paul Pogba didn't solve our problems, and Bruno Fernandes didn't solve our problems, and Cristiano Ronaldo didn't solve our problems, and Jadon Sancho didn't solve our problems, and Anthony Martial, and everybody else that's gone before them. We are way past one player superstar solving our problems. We are bloody miles off, and we are in the bottom half of the Premier League because we deserve to be, and we've got to stop chasing dreams of one or two players coming in and changing it. It is open heart surgery, and that is what needs to happen at Manchester United. And I, for one, am tired of having to fight the distraction. It's so frustrating. It really, really is. So much to get into this morning, but I just wanted to bury that stupid story like a cat buries a shit. Hi, Mark. Do you think Ineos will be reluctant to buy Amorim more players considering their failed investment in Ten Hag, says Toe Jam? Good point. Matty says, Neville rightly getting criticised. He used to call out the Glazers, now nothing on Ineos. Then the nerve to question Amorim tactics, nothing when it was Ollie. Well, I actually think the biggest story this morning is actually coming in, and I don't normally shout out the mainstream, but this was an article in the Daily Telegraph in the UK this morning from a journalist called Alan Tyers, and it says, it is time for Sky to stop letting Gary Neville cover Manchester United. This is not Webby and O'Neill, because I saw Tony was talking about it last night. He said that Neville's comments were disgraceful. It's not the United Stand. Not a lot of, to be honest, I don't think there's many other people out there who are actually saying what really matters at the moment. I mean, I think the Webby and O'Neill channel is really good. I watch it a lot. Obviously, on the United Stand, I'm biased. I think there's a lot being said. I don't think a lot of other people are doing it. I don't know whether they're scared of, United or whatever, but I mean, bending over for Manchester United, bloody hell. Have you seen who owns the club for 20 years? It's time to start saying what you think. The club's a mess. Anyway, it says it's time for Sky to stop letting Gary Neville cover Manchester United. The pundit is more than happy to put the boot into the coach and players at his old club. But what about the penny-pinching, floundering Old Trafford top brass? More people start talking about this, the better. I mean, I was talking, well, I'm not going to say who I was talking to last night because it's not fair to mention them when they might not want to be mentioned. But we were talking about Neville's commentary yesterday. And basically, just propaganda. It's propaganda. Like that actually does need to be discussed. He signed up to something with Ineos and the regeneration of that area. I mean, has he signed up for the, out of the goodness of his heart, or is there some financial reward for that? So we've got a guy talking to millions about Man United Football Club who is in a deal with Ineos, apparently, where there's money involved. He can't talk about Man United. It's not speculative. You cannot. If I was sat on TV now talking about Manchester United and I'd signed a deal with Ineos, I would get slaughtered for it. If I wouldn't say anything about Ineos, if I'm going, yeah, Amorim's tactics are a joke, the players are a joke, don't talk to me about anything to do with the ownership. That can't happen. That literally cannot happen. It's propaganda. It's its absolute peak. It's propaganda. If Gary Neville won't talk about Ineos and what they've done to this football club in 12 months, then they are getting PR for free on the biggest sports channel in the UK. That's not right. Fair play to that journalist, and I hope a lot of other people pick up on it as well. You cannot have, on the biggest sports channel in the UK, somebody who is unwilling to talk about the real issue at Manchester United. So I want Gary Neville to talk about it. He's got such a big platform. And at the moment, everybody's looking at him in the fan base and going, mate, listen to what some of the stuff he said yesterday. Like, some of the stuff he said yesterday about United was just unbelievable. Like, I have the article up here. Where was it? Basically saying that the tactics are atrocious. You wouldn't see this on an under-9s pitch. And I'm like, hold on a minute. You're a failed coach at Valencia who spoke openly about the pressures of doing that job. You know what it's like to run a football club. You know what it's like to be a coach under owners of a football club. And you're sat there exclusively pushing it onto a manager. It's not right. The Beast says, how many of this squad are actually part of a plan and how many are there just to make up the numbers? If only we'd listened to Rangnick, we wasted 3 years, says the Beast. Yeah. Prabhu says, I feel you criticise a lot but don't give solutions. Can you share 5 things you would do as a United owner to turn things around, clear and actionable? Prabhu, just a little bit of a reminder, we're just fans. We're actually talking about real life issues at our football club. I am not the owner of Man United. I'm not the CEO. I am not the director. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. So for me to give you 5 actionable things, I tell you what, send me your email address. I'll tell you what, I'll take a couple of months off and I'll write it out for you. I mean, How am I supposed to tell you the 5 actionable things at Manchester United? But the most important thing is, how much money have I got? Because if I'm in charge of Man United and I've got no fucking money, I can't clear the debt. So I'm going to be a shit owner. And I think that's the message I would send to you, Prabhu, is I can't make Man United great again, Mark Goldbridge, with, without having a billion in the bank. I can't do that. I've told you that story before. I'm not saying I can run Man United better than Sir Jim Ratcliffe. What I'm saying is certain people shouldn't be running that football club. If you haven't got personal wealth, you shouldn't be buying Man United. We'd all love a go at it. I mean, this is a great point by Prabhu. I can't sit here and say I would run Man United better than Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I think I would, because I know more about football than he does, but I can't actually run it any better because I don't have £1 billion. I need money to clear the debt, which you can do. I can't put £1 billion in for transfers. I can't do that. But I can clear the debt. That is not to do with FFP. That is not to do with PSR. I can walk in tomorrow and I can clear the debt. And you know what happens then, Prabhu? When I clear the debt, Manchester United don't have to pay £30 million in the summer on debt interest. Or next year. Or the year after, and suddenly we've got a lot more money to spend on transfers because we're not paying debt interest. But I can't do that. So number one for me, we needed an owner who will clear the debt. Apparently one was meant to do that. If you keep going like this, we will be the next Leeds, says Rizvan. We will be relegated by then, says Carlos. Did you watch the post-match reaction, Mark? You need to keep these chuff monsters in check. Some awful takes and opinions, worse than Gary, says Rack. I didn't watch the fan forum. I feel like I should. But I also feel that the United Stand is a democracy, and what you don't get from me, you should get from other people, whether you agree with it or not. So I take your points on board. A lot of people were messaging me saying you'd slaughter them for what they were saying. Well, I don't do the fan forum, and you get different things in. As a fan base, we're like a relationship when we keep getting cheated on and just let it happen because they buy us a present. Brilliant analogy, Josh. Absolutely brilliant analogy. That is exactly what we get spun by. Patrick Lynch says, Sky Sports spent 15 minutes talking about the Spurs ownership. United as a club are collapsing and hardly a single word spoken about our ownership. It's crazy, says Patrick. Yeah, I saw that, Patrick. So literally, Sky Sports, if you're not in the UK, after the game yesterday, big section slating Amorim's tactics, and then a big section applauding Spurs fans for criticising and protesting against the ownership, but no section on Man United's ownership. Wonder who was sat in the studio for that. Yeah, Gary Neville. If Glazers kept the land but sell the club, would you? Says Garfield. I don't know what that means, Garfield, really. One action, sell the land, clear the debt, says Keel. Morning, Mark. I want Amorim to stay, but do you think Glinios are likely to sack him, as it would be cheaper to do that than to rebuild the squad, says Neil. Gary Neville should rename his pod to Stick to Business, says Ryan. Neville keeping face to sell his hotel to Ineos, says Stuart. There's nothing wrong with that. Just don't sit on the TV talking about Man United when you're conflicted. The problem is with the ownership, but Amorim out already started. We cannot buy or change players. Unless owners are financially hit, nothing will change. Only relegation will help us, says Rohith. Do you think Gary Neville is actually a United supporter? I think he is Super Donut, yeah, but I think he's also a business person, and I think for some reason he doesn't want to talk about the ownership. And any Man United fan at the moment would be talking about the ownership. People need to realise actions are more than 1,000 words. Sacking people but promising new signings in the summer make sense, says David. Have you heard of the channel Football? I think all these people questioning Amorim's system need to watch his videos, says Naveen. Hi, Mark. Do you think Ineos will be reluctant to buy Amorim? More players have done that one. And the biggest mistake we have done was getting rid of a top 6 team that was never good enough to just go ahead and replace them with this championship quality. Scary parties, or is you all love these frauds, says Abraham. You need to give us more than that, mate. I mean, that's just a statement of some personal vendetta thing that none of us are on the page with. So, yeah, fair play for the comment, but I don't know what you mean. I do know what this means, though. This is what I did want to talk about. So, look, let's talk about Ruben Amorim. He's under fire. You've got Gary Neville talking about tactics of an under-9s team, which is probably one of the most insulting things you can say about a manager. He then tried to cover it up by saying Amorim's angry that they're not doing it. But basically, he spent most of that first half slating the tactics, like he has done for the last few weeks, like Robbie Savage has done, like everybody's done. We need to change the formation. We need to change the tactics. So let's call this out for a couple of minutes. Let's actually have a chat about the tactics of Manchester United, because I watched the game yesterday. I actually thought we played better than we have done for quite a while, in extreme circumstances with a bench full of kids and some people playing out of position. But we need to have this conversation because, you know, from the media, you get comments like, you know, De Ligt is slow and not very strong. I think the mainstream can basically say what they like without any accountability. And I think it's hit sort of the dialogue around Man United now that Amorim needs to change his formation, because a few people who don't know very much about football keep saying it. He's got to change his formation. He's got to change his formation. So I thought, instead of just arguing about we don't need to change our formation, let's change the formation. So yesterday, Gary Neville, all these people are talking about Man United changing their formation. So I thought, well, let's change our formation. And I presume they want us to go back to something the players have played before. So let's go to a 4-3-3. That would be the 4-3-3 yesterday. Does that team, to you, look like it's going to beat Spurs going to a 4-3-3 playing like that? Because I think we're better off doing what we were doing with a manager that doesn't play 4-3-3. We're probably better sticking with the system that the manager wants to play. I look at that as a 4-3-3 and I go, okay, you've got Maguire and De Ligt as a 2, which we know that Maguire in a 2 is vulnerable. So straight away, I'm worried about that. You've also got Mazraoui and Dorgu as fullbacks. Okay, that could work. Dalot would have to go on the wing. He can't cross his legs, so what are we doing with him on the wing? Or you could put Mazraoui on the wing, but that's not good. That doesn't work. Garnacho is the only winger we've got. And then the midfield 3, well, we may as well get beat 6-0. I mean, Casemiro, Bruno and Xerxes is a midfield 3. So people talk about formation change. So let's go to a 4-3-3 where half the team's out of position, playing a system Amorim doesn't use, and apparently that will be better. And this is what I mean. Some of you might look at that and go, I'd rather that. But the bottom line is, Ruben Amorim doesn't play 4-3-3. It's not his system. That team has got half of it out of position anyway. And that's what all this tactical change that these ex-players and the media are talking about, that's basically what they're talking about. He needs to change it. He needs to change it. But you look at what they're actually talking about, and that system is no better than the system we play, but at least the system we play is the system that Amorim plays. So let's go back to Ten Hag's system with Amorim in charge, but actually we haven't got the players to play it. And it's got weaknesses. Maguire in a 2 doesn't work anymore. Dalot on the right wing won't work. And Bruno in a midfield 3 with Casemiro and Xerxes is a bloody nightmare. So they're talking about, they're spending all this time after the game, during the game, before the game. You know what? I even saw it on Match of the Day yesterday. Mika Richards and Ashley Williams were with Mark Chapman on Match of the Day too. And they were going, Mika Richards was saying, he's got, you know, I know he's a manager and he wants to build his team for the future, but you've got to get results. You've got to put the players in positions they want to play. And I was like, this came into my mind. Mika, is that better than what we're doing? No, it's not. We've only got 1 winger, and you want us to play a system that needs at least 3, and you've got to start 2. We need midfielders for that. We haven't got any bloody midfielders, and going to a back 4 makes Maguire weaker. So this is what people are talking about when they're on about he's got to tweak his tact. You know what? You know what it is? A lot of analysis around football now is just sound bites. Oh, they're playing like a team of under-9s. They're not playing like a team of under-9s at all, you prat. If you watch an under-9s team, you know, they fall over and cry. You're like, they're not playing like a bunch of under-9s. You just want to say something for the hell of it. Well, talk about fucking Ineos. Oh, they need to change the system to something that they've played before. We've only ever played a 4-3-3 before, so there it is. Does that look, on paper, better than what we were playing before under Amorim? No, it doesn't. But the thing is, if you shout about it enough and moan about it enough, it'll hit the dialogue of the fan base and the wider media, and then Amorim's having to do interviews now justifying his own tactics. This is the problem. Ruben Amorim has always played a 3-4-3 or versions of it. Always. We brought him here. He didn't swim from Sporting to Manchester and go, I'm taking control. We took him out of a good job where his system worked and brought him to Manchester United. We brought him here. Why, when we brought him here, should he change his formation because some failed pundits think he should? And that would be what the failed pundits think he should do, which is what he doesn't do. How's about, Gary and co, instead of moaning about a manager changing his formation, you moan about the people who brought him here, knowing the situation, and then not giving him the players to do it. The fact is, when you look at Manchester United and you look at Ruben Amorim, the system he plays is very specific and it needs very specific players. Chris Wood up front for Man City, is it going to work? I don't think it would. Even though he's a good player, you need specific players to do jobs. And they have not brought those players in. Dorgu's played one game on the left and already looks like one of our best players. That's Amorim's only signing. One player. And he already looks like one of the best players in the system because he suits the fucking system. Dorgu actually suits the system. He can defend, he can get forward, he's got high stamina, he's got a left foot. Dorgu actually looks, I know it's only one game, but looks like one of the best players in Amorim's system because he's the only bloody player they've got. That's all they've got. So I think that when you're looking at what's going wrong at Manchester United at the moment, it always goes back to the ownership. And I genuinely think they saw Amorim and thought, oh, Man City probably want him. I mean, Barada might have told them, Man City want Amorim. They want him after Pep. They're going to get him. I know they're going to get him. We should get him. And that's fine. He's obviously a good manager. Maybe Man City did want him. Maybe he was the Pep replacement. But that's not good enough. Man City spend money. Man City have got players that can play Amorim's football. Man United haven't and won't spend money. So I do genuinely think that we went, let's get him, he's really good and hipster, and then thought he would come here and polish a turd. And he hasn't done that. And as we've mentioned many times over the years, a lot of this isn't Ineos's fault, but they are part of the problem now. You go from Jose Mourinho to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. Stylistically very different, but also personality very different. Like a Mourinho team to an Ole team is night and day. Tactically, but also personality. One of them rules the roost, experienced, won it all, authoritarian. The other one, smile on his face, wants everyone to be his mate. Doesn't mean he's a bad coach, by the way, but what I'm talking about is Jose to Ole, completely different change. Ole to Rangnick, oh my God, completely different change. Rangnick to Ten Hag, a little bit close, but ultimately very different because look at the players that Rangnick wanted to bring in, the Alvarez's, the Vardiels, the Nkunkus. Look at the players Ten Hag brought in, completely different. Then you go Ten Hag to Amorim, oh my God, completely different again. So Man United just keep going from one project to another and there is absolutely no connection between it. It's like night, day, night, day, night, day. We never go similar. And from Ten Hag to Amorim is probably the biggest thing we've ever done because Ten Hag basically settled on a 4-3-3. One holding midfielder, one box-to-box, one a bit attacking, two wide men, a striker, a back four. That was Ten Hag's system for 2 years. Ruben Amorim comes in November, gets given a Ten Hag team that's underperforming in a 4-3-3, but is a 3-4-3 manager with a very distinctive style of play. And here we are in February losing games a lot and wondering why the team's taking a long time to adjust. But I genuinely don't understand that we need to change the tactics, we need to change the formation, because when you ask people what it is you would do, they won't tell you. So you have to produce that. And that doesn't work. That just doesn't work. And also, Amorim abandoning what he's all about is like, it's like setting off on a journey somewhere and it being difficult. but you're making progress. And then going, this is difficult. Let me go and start another journey from the start again. But I will come back to this one again later because that's what I want to do. But I'll have to start from here again. You get to a point where it's difficult on the journey with Amorim and his formation, but you've got to keep going. You can't abandon it to go back to something you doesn't believe in, to then come back here again next season and start from the start again. We've got to... This is the guy we went with. This is the guy we chose. This is the guy Ineos chose. It's not his fault. And yet he is getting the criticism all the time. And I find it incredible how he is getting piled on. Having said that, I don't find it totally incredible because, let's be honest, this has been going on at Man United for a long time. The media will push it onto Amorim and they'll start talking about things like, oh, they've lost this many games, they've lost that many games. David Moyes at Everton. Can we shut up about David Moyes at Everton? Like, Everton are a relegation team and they have been for years. They've got very, very distinctive players. None of them are going to get signed by Liverpool or Arsenal or anybody. What Everton player is going to get signed by any of them lot? They are players that, if you ask them to win the second ball, be organised and grind out results, they're perfect for it. The Tarkovskis of this world, you know, they're perfect for it. And that is David Moyes football. So what I'm saying is David Moyes has done a great job at Everton and we're about to see how great on Saturday. But he's walked into a club with a set of players that fit perfectly. Because Sean Dyche has been there for 2 years. And Burnley ball and Everton ball is not that different to West Ham ball and David Moyes ball. So he walks into a bunch of players who want to play his system and know how to play it. Amorim's walked into a set of players who can't play modern football. They can't even train modern football, let alone play modern football. So it's going to take longer. As for Anthony scoring 3 goals for Betis, I mean, again, distraction or not, remind me, did Anthony score in his first 3 games for Manchester United? Yes. And they were all Premier League games. Oh, Anthony's cooking. Oh, Anthony's cooking. We've made a mistake there. We have made a mistake there. We didn't bloody replace him. That was the mistake. And whose mistake was that? Oh, could it be Ineos again? I couldn't give a shit if Anthony scores every bloody week at Betis because we'll get some money for him. But I'll tell you the truth, whether you're talking about Jadon Sancho, Anthony, Van der Beek, Marcus Rashford, if they go off and perform somewhere else, that's on them. They weren't walking into Carrington and Ruben Amorim was tying their hands behind their back, you know, and making them play on the with his right foot. They were being paid 200 grand a week and didn't perform. If they go and perform at Betis, the question has to be, not did Amorim get it wrong, not did Man United get it wrong, why the fuck are you performing for Betis and not performing for Manchester United? Who's responsible for that? Because in life, you're responsible for your own performances 99.9% of the time. I think it's good that Anthony's scoring goals because we'll get some bloody money for him. I think it's good that Rashford played well for Villa at the weekend because we'll get some money for him. The question is not why did we let them go, because I think we're right to let people go. I mean, at the end of the day, how hypocritical is it if a manager comes in and says, I don't rate these players, get rid of them? You can't blame Amorim because Anthony and Rashford are doing reasonably well. He wanted them out, but hasn't been given a replacement. And yet, I woke up this morning and I can see people going, Amorim made a mistake getting rid of Anthony and Rashford. Well, he didn't. He didn't. The mistake is he was allowed to get rid of them, but he's not been allowed to replace them. What if actually Amorim had been given replacements and they were doing better than Anthony's doing at Betis and Rashford's doing at Villa? The problem is, yet again, we're back to the ownership because they have removed players that Amorim doesn't want and then hung him out to dry by not giving him replacements. So the players that leave, they go and work hard now because they've got a point to prove, but Amorim's left with nothing. Nothing. So he does look a bit naive because he's got rid of players that are doing quite well, but they're doing well because they want to prove a point. He's not been given the players to replace them to prove his point, which again goes back to the bloody ownership. What was refreshing was to see Dorgu's one touch and cross, unlike Delot. Truck, I was very impressed with Dorgu yesterday, but it's even more frustrating, isn't it? Because Amorim's had one signing and he looks like one of the best players we've got in the system. What I meant earlier is, Mark, would you let the Glazers keep the regeneration land as part of the deal if they sold the club? Says Garfield Patterson. I mean, look, I get what you mean now, Garfield, but I don't want to be offensive, but I can't deal with speculation and hypotheticals. Would you get relegated if you got rid of the Glazers? Mate, how do we get rid of the Glazers? Would you let them keep the land if the Glazers left? I mean, since when has that ever been spoken about? We can't. What I'm saying is, we can't live in a fantasy now. We're praying the Glazers will go won't work. Coming up with hypothetical scenarios. Would you do this? Would you do that? Well, we actually have got to remove the Glazers from this football club. And when I say the Glazers, they run the football club. Ineos don't own the football club. Ineos own 28%. They don't own the football club, the Glazers do. So if you remove the Glazers, you probably remove Ineos as well. Or maybe Ineos buy the whole club, but I don't think they've got the money for it. But we can't talk about hypotheticals. They need removing. They need removing from the football club. I don't know whether that's possible. I'm terrified if Glanios somehow able to claim entire club land for cheap and turn United into an intangible entity for sale to 2 to 3 billion. United will have to rent stadium from Glinios for eternity and will never get it back, says Sarvesh. Ashley says, I'm sick of Glinios and feel for the people losing their jobs because of them. I'd be at the protest if I wasn't across the world. Get these owners out, says Ashley. Amorim should have faith in the youth, is my only worry, says Sully. The Glazers are waiting for the Unify League, the new form of the Super League. The EU Court of Justice already gave its green light, says Abe. It is indirect pressure on Amorim to let owners off the hook with some wins. All the failure is because of them, and Neville is busy saving them, says Prazad. People also need to understand the kids on the bench. We're there to fill the bench seats because there's no one else in our club. They are not the answer, says John. I do want to talk about the youth because Amorim spoke about the youth and he basically said that he will use them at some point, but he felt that the change yesterday wasn't the right thing to do. I think a few people have sort of jumped on Amorim for that because, and I don't really get it. I don't really get it. I mean, of course, it's exciting to see a young player come on. I mean, I remember Ryan Giggs at 17. It is really exciting, and I'm never going to knock a Man United fan for wanting to see 2 or 3 of those young players come on. But also, I'm old enough to remember, as I said to you yesterday, how long it took David Beckham or Paul Scholes to adjust and become Man United players. They didn't come off the bench against Spurs away in a shit team and play like prime David Beckham. Like, they took years. So most young players take time. And although every now and again you'll bring someone off the bench and it's Ryan Giggs and they're ready to go from day one, most of them will take a long time to adjust. And along that journey, you'll lose some of them, like Paddy McNair, because Van Gaal will humiliate them by taking them off after half an hour and they'll never recover from it. So you've got to be very, very careful with young players because if you throw them into a situation where they're out of their depth, psychologically it will set them back, which is why with a lot of young players, you want to bring them on 3-0 up, half an hour to go at Old Trafford and nurture them through. So I'm not going to knock Amorim for that because I do think that he wants to use these players, but I think also you want to use them in the right circumstances, and he obviously didn't feel that yesterday was the right circumstance to do that. But that's the frustration of the situation, isn't it? People also need to understand, I've done that from John. Why is there higher expectations to win games when our squad is getting worse every week? The worse the squad gets, the higher expectation seems to get, says Manti. Well, did you hear what Ange said yesterday? I didn't like what Ange said yesterday. He basically said, I could see Amorim yesterday with a bench full of kids and people playing out position, and I've had to do that for 2 months. And I thought, you're a Tottenham manager, mate. You're managing Tottenham. You're not managing Man United. Don't relate that situation yesterday to what you've done for 2 months. Like, it's not the same. And also, I think for most of that time, you did have at least 1 or 2 senior players on your bench that you could bring on up front. Like, we haven't got that. Yesterday, we just haven't got that. We've got no changes we can make in the attack, apart from a 17-year-old who was making his debut. So, and we're Manchester United and you're Spurs. But blah-de-blah, the bottom line is Spurs aren't Man United. Spurs have had an injury crisis. No Manchester United fan wants to be making excuses about injuries. I don't want to make excuses about injuries. I really don't. I don't want to say it's an excuse because Ahmad's out injured. I don't want to say it's an excuse because Mainu, Eriksen, Agate, Collier are all out. And we're having to pick Casemiro, who is useless. That to me is not an excuse. And people might be going, but you've used it as an excuse. I'll defend Amorim on it, but it's not an excuse. In the wider picture, this is the point, surely. I know yesterday was really difficult for Amorim, and you know it was really difficult as well. But it's not an excuse. It's just about where you put the blame. I don't blame Amorim for having to try and do something with very limited resources. It's not his fault. But it's not an excuse. It's just where you put the blame. The blame goes to Ineos. They are running the football side, apparently. Injuries killed us last year. 12 months later, we're being killed by injuries. That is a structural management issue. That is predictive. That is inevitable. And that is something in management that if you run a business and on the run up to Christmas, you run out of turkey and potatoes and you can't serve roast dinner, roast turkey and roast potatoes in the week before Christmas because you've run out. The following Christmas, you know that happened last year and you make sure that you've got enough. It's just basic management. Take it away from football for a moment. It's basic management. If it's Formula One and you're winning the race, but with 10 laps to go, you've run out of petrol because you didn't bring enough. You're not going to do it in the next race, are you? Because you've just blown it in front of the world. So whatever business you're running, it is completely unacceptable when something's happened a year before and you allow it to happen again. It is not an excuse for anybody to say we've got an injury crisis and this is what's going to happen. It's not Amorim's fault. And I think Amorim, you've got to go, well, you can't blame him for it because it's not his fault. But it's not an excuse at all because the ownership, which is the same ownership from a year ago, knows what happened a year ago and have put us into this situation. So I don't want to hear people saying that injuries are an excuse or we've got a bench full of kids. That is an explanation for why Amorim is struggling, but it's not an excuse for Manchester United's situation because our owners saw this crisis last year at the same time and have allowed it to happen again. That's inexcusable. That's bad ownership. And that is something that should have been being said yesterday on Sky Sports by somebody. Somebody on Sky, whether it's Jamie Redknapp or Jermaine Defoe or maybe the person who knows the club, Gary Neville, they should have been sat there saying that yesterday. From an ownership point of view, that is disgraceful that they've allowed an abysmal situation to occur 12 months later. And unfortunately, it doesn't matter what business you are, that is crap. It is absolutely bad management. And Barada's at fault for that. Wilcox is at fault for that. Sir Jim, Sir David, they're all at fault for that because when they were doing their strategic review last year, one of the big things would have been, why did we have an injury crisis towards the end of the season? Why were we having to play so many different centre-back combinations? That can't happen again. 12 months later, it's happened again in front of them when they're supposedly running strategic reviews and bringing in best in class. Barada's got to take responsibility for that. He's a football guy. How has he, as a CEO, not looked at what happened at the end of last season and allowed it to happen again? And maybe his hands are tied. Maybe he said, this is going to happen again. We need to do this, this and this. And Joel Glazer and Sir Jim have gone, no. But I can't make excuses for a management team that's meant to be best in class. Maybe there are mitigating reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if Wilcox and Barada had suggested 2 or 3 players for January and Joel Glazer's not written the checks again. But everybody takes responsibility for it, of course. The injuries in the benches are on Ineos 2 seasons running. They allowed this nonsense and they're trying to hang out managers for that, says Ray. It's in Ineos and the Glazers' interest that Ruben Amorim starts to take the heat. Garfield's gifted 5 memberships. We have never given a manager all of the following: transfer backing, clear the deadwood, protection from the media, get rid of toxic players, clear the debts, is cruel. And just going back to that comment by Prabhu, I think it was as well. What's your 5-step plan for Manchester United to be successful? Well, we need a billionaire owner to clear the debt. That's number 1. That's been the same for about 5 years now, and it's still the same today. But if you are going to go from Eric Ten Hag's 4-3-3 to Ruben Amorim's 3-4-3 in a completely different system with completely different player requirements, then you need to spend £500 million ASAP. I look at that Man United side and I look at Sporting. Man United need at least an experienced striker, a very good one, at least 2 attacking players that can play as a 10 and out wide. So 2, because we just don't have the depth or the quality in that position. We need a Casemiro replacement who can play holding midfielder. So how many players have we got there? 4. We need another centre-back who can play out from the back. That's 5. 5. And that's just the start. I still think we probably need a goalkeeper. I still think we need another fullback or 2 as well. But we long term, we need about 8 players. Short term, we need 5, and they need to be around the ready to go 50, 60 million pounds. Not 18, 19, let's be good in 5 years. And then maybe sell them in 3. But that's what we're being told. That's what we're being sold as well. We're being sold a long project. And as Ranić said, this is nothing that can't be solved in a year. Like, we could solve a lot of this in the summer. I mean, look, any owner of this football club is going to have a strategy to bring in 4 or 5 top quality players this summer for the new manager. But not this ownership, because they can't afford it. Garfield, welcome to the Members Club. We need to convert the casual supporters to our way of thinking and show them the truth. This is the challenge. Then we can unite for protest and change as MB. Mate, you're right. People are waking up this morning and they're talking about formation change, not even thinking it through, like we've just been through. People are waking up this morning and, you know, getting excited about Osman, not even thinking it through. But ultimately, this is not civil war in the fan base. You're right. We need to converse together and come together. And as I said yesterday, singling out Bruno or Garnacho, what does that do? Like, we're wet. That's down here. It's up here. You've got to go up here. Thinking Osman's going to solve it, you're down here. We've been doing this for 10 years. You've got to go up here. Thinking the manager's the problem, you're down here. We've got to go up here. But as I say, you wake up, you look at a news article, you get sent a video clip, and people are actually running headlines of Amorim wants Osman as their leading story. And you go, well, you're part of the problem. You might not educate. If they educate themselves, great. But you are part of the problem. Amorim wants Osman. No, he doesn't. It's just a PR piece to spin everybody around and focus on things that they don't want us to focus on. I love how we spent so much on this world-class executives, yet they're all in hiding. Pathetic, says Greg. The club won't see 1 penny of the land sale. The Glazers will keep it, says David. We're on a blocked motorway and refusing to listen to the sat-nav that is telling us to get off at every junction we call past, says Smitty. What was refreshing was to see Dorgu, says Truck. Done that one. Done that one as well. Thank you very much for your comments this morning. Fred Flintstone says, let me just have a sip of water in my throat. This show's flown by this morning as well. I genuinely looked at the clock there and thought it was going to be 20 past 10. How have we done 50 minutes? Fred Flintstone says you should seriously consider changing up the forum. Some of the takes in the last weeks were disgusting and dividing, says Fred. I'm going to have to watch this forum back. Like, what? If somebody can summarise me what the issues were with the forum. Look, I'm not calling the forum out. I think it's a great show. And I think that what you've heard on the forum, I don't know what it is, but it's not like you're not seeing it on social media anyway. I'd rather these takes were on the forum, on the United Stand, for us to actually discuss, discount, agree with, etc. So that, look, for me, I think anybody that's going after manager, tactics, players, I'm not disagreeing with them per se, even though I don't respect them. But why are you talking about Garnacho? Why are you talking about Amorim's tactics? These issues are irrelevant compared to what's actually going on at the club. We've got to get it up there. We've got to get up there. That's what we've got to go. Like, everybody's distracting from the truth. And remember, we're a fan base that divides itself on its own up against billionaires with huge PR machines. Well, say what you like about the Glazers, but they've survived for 20 years. They're rich people with huge, huge, huge resources to spin positives. Somebody said this morning, do you really think Man United are putting it out there through a Turkish journalist that they want Victor Osimhen? Well, I don't know, but why would you think they're not? This is the same Manchester United that a few years ago had a guy working for them, and maybe still does, that monitors social media on individual players, and when they're not doing well, puts stories out there to make their popularity go up. So you genuinely think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Man United get in contact with a journalist in Turkey and say that we're after Osimhen and we're agreeing terms? You can put that out there. The world's a small place. Why is that not possible? We already know from previous shareholder meetings that Man United, when they're talking about profits, talk about social media interaction in relation to transfer stories. Why would that not be a thing? If there's no Osimhen story this morning, where's the positive to spin away from actually what the problem is? It's been going on for years. Nothing wrong with the forum. Sheep want an echo chamber, says Class of 99. Well, thank you very much for your honesty. Prazid says, here is the take. Change formation. Why buy Dorgu when we need midfielder? Moyes would do better. Amorim is stubborn, says Prazid. Yeah, but you know what, Prazad? That's fine, because literally this is the alternative that these people want, and it makes no sense. Amorim's too stubborn. Amorim needs to change his formation. There's the formation change. That's Ten Hag's system. Why would you bring a manager in to play Ten Hag's system? And why is that a better team than Amorim's picking? I don't want to see Maguire in a 2. I don't want to see Dalot on the right wing. I don't want to see a midfield of Casemiro, Bruno and Xerxes. But this is what I mean. We need to change the formation. Amorim's too stubborn. Why is Amorim too stubborn? He's a guy that plays a certain system and has done it for years, and you want him to change at Man United. Maybe Man United should change for him. We employed him. But the formation change you're talking about, there it is. It's shit. It doesn't work, and it's somebody else's system. I'm sort of lost on the screaming and shouting of our fans over recent years that these players' player power needs to end. You've now got people saying, we should play the system the players want to play. Should we let them go home when it's dark as well? Should we just, play Moyes ball? Like, this is what I mean. People start talking about stubbornness and tactical changes, but they don't actually say. Remember like this time last year when people wanted Ten Hag to be sacked? And it was like, well, who are you going to replace him with? Well, that's not my job. Just sack him. Yeah, well, okay. Let's change the tactics and the formation. What are you going to change it to? Because that's the only one that the players have played in the last 2 years. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Maguire and De Ligt as a 2 won't work. You know it won't work. Casemiro with Bruno and Xerxes in the midfield won't work. Dalot on the right wing won't work. What are we going to do? Put Dorgu on the right wing and put Dalot back to left back. Oh, we haven't got a left back again. It won't work. And it's not his system either. So when it doesn't work, he'll get slated again. But, we need a tactical shift. I'm all for alternatives. I'm all for ideas, but people don't think it through. They just want to moan. Zen says, try 4-3-3, 4-4-2 because this players can't play 3-4-3. There's the 4-3-3, mate. Why does that work? Explain to me what visually works about that for you. 4-4-2. It's not 1999. 4-4-2. So we're now going to play Bruno and Casemiro as a midfield 2 against midfields that play with a 3. And this is what I mean. Just absolute nonsense. Change the bloody formation. Like, come on. Things are bad, but stop acting like there's some magic pill that's going to change it. The reality is, these players aren't good enough to play modern football. So you want them to go and play Moyes ball or Deitch ball or something like, or Ollie ball. That's what you want. And you hated it. But you want to go and do that. We've got a manager that's trying to get us to play a modern style of football, and it's going to be difficult, and he needs players. We have to stick with it, and we have to remove the players. We don't remove the manager, and we don't change the system. But people want to change the system again, and I find it hilarious. I find it absolutely hilarious that people think that that's a good idea to do it. Prazad, thank you. I understood that it was from the forum. 3-5-2, flood the midfield, striking partnerships is Keel Robinson. So a completely new formation that nobody's played. I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. So you're coming up with a formation that we've never played before. That's even worse, Keel. with all due respect. At least Neville and co want us to go and play a formation we've played before that doesn't work. You want us to go and play a new formation we've never played. That's even worse. Because then we're saying the same thing. The players haven't played the system. Remember when Ineos promised us best in class, says Connor. Thank you very much. Okay, we've gone really late this morning. We're back at 2 o'clock, 8 o'clock tonight. Fantastic show this morning. Look, the bottom line is you're free to forge your own opinion. But when you forge your own opinion, you've got to be open to the fact that people might not agree with it. If I had a magic wand, it would be that every Man United fan thought exactly this. It's time for change. We're going to sink and things are going to get worse. We need change. And we don't like what's happening to our club. Ineos have a plan. Nobody likes it. It's horrific. And also, they're basically the Glazers. I wish everybody thought that. I wish everybody wouldn't get spun by ridiculous formation changes or Osimhen to Man United. But that's part of the journey. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. And you have to ask a personal question. Are you going to give up or are you going to try? And some people would rather try and fail than do nothing. But if we do nothing, you've got no reason to complain because basically you're accepting what's happening to the football club. But falling for transfer stories and formation changes, I mean, it's just distraction as far as I'm concerned. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. And we'll be back with you at 2 o'clock. And I just wonder one prediction for you. I wonder what shit is coming out from certain journalists over the next few hours. Can you imagine the spin bullshit these client journalists are going to put out over the next 24 hours? Just get ready. I guarantee by 2 o'clock or 8 o'clock, there's going to be some sort of players have had enough of the system because people are obsessed with this system thing at the moment. And as we've constructed this morning, that's the alternative and it stinks. Speak to you in a bit.